and times of conscious awakening. When you combine holistic nursing with converging integrative medicine, what you get is revolution. It's humanity's journey to self-healing and the true evolution to healthy living. Join us today on the Transparent Holistic Revolution podcast, where we take you to the many aspects of holistic nursing and beyond. So here's your host for today's podcast, Miss Barbie Picciano Caranci.
Welcome to the Transparent Holistic Revolution podcast, where we introduce integrative and holistic professionals, programs, and practices for self-care, healthcare, or anyone seeking tools to meet their highest goals. I'm Barb Picciano, a holistic nurse, healer, educator, and pioneer in integrating holistic care into acute care settings for patients, family, and staff members. Today is April 1st, 2020, and today I wanted to focus on compassion and self-care. And before we get on to our guest, I'd like to just start our podcast today with a brief moment of self-compassion. And some folks don't really understand what my definition of compassion is or what someone else's definition of compassion is. So I actually have Webster's definition of compassion for today. Webster's dictionary definition is, compassion is a sympathetic consciousness of others' distress together with a desire to alleviate it. And so today I'd like to start the show with self-compassion. So what I'd like you to do is just start by closing your eyes and taking a deep breath in and slowly letting it out. And just imagine looking in the mirror and seeing yourself. And as you take another slow, deep breath in, look into your eyes and say, I love you. And take another deep breath in, nice and slow. And exhale nice and slow. And open your eyes and come back to now. And that's just a little exercise you can do anytime, any place, unless you're driving, and really take a moment to just go inside and love yourself. And speaking of self-compassion and compassion, I'm very excited to have our guest today. Our guest is Maggie Brown, and she is an advanced practice board-certified holistic nurse and health and wellness coach, as well as a certified nature and forest therapy guide and Reiki master. She has established both the Forest Therapy for Me program and Inner Light Recovery, an integrative healing practice, since 2008. Newly added to her holistic-driven programs is the Compassion Caravan, which we will be talking about with Maggie today. Welcome to the show, Maggie. Thank you for joining us.
Hi, Barb. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here today on April 1st.
Yes, so no jokes today.
Yes, I know.
I woke up yesterday thinking it was April 1st, so it's been an interesting 24 hours for me. I think that what the world needs now is really compassion, and so as much as we tried to get together before today is probably one of the most appropriate days, considering the situation not only in our own country but across the planet with the situation with the virus going on. And I know that you started this journey long before what's happening right now, and I always try to talk with our nurse guests about their journey into nursing and holistic nursing. So maybe you could share some of that with us first.
Sure. Yeah. So I came to nursing. It's a question I get a lot, and I think it's a combination of things. One, being a candy striper in the hospital and really loving working with the patients, just chatting and bringing more to those basic needs, being fully present as a young person, as it could be. And then when I got to college, I really wanted to be a marine biologist, but I was taking the same core courses and started as nursing and found the love for nursing, So I said goodbye to the fish and moved to the humans. And I was in a wonderful program that was very holistic in its approach. The individual in front of you is a mind, body, spirit. And, of course, talked about those wonderful nursing theorists, Jean Watson, Martha Rogers, Margaret Newman, all of which talked about a real integrative way of being and also coming from this vibration of love. So I started in acute care, as most of us do, and have that really snapshot memory of walking down the hall one day. It was a big 40-bed unit with telemetry and isolation, and I had great coworkers and support staff, everything. It was a really good working team environment, let me say that, but very challenging because of the staffing and the level of acuity of care at times. And I remember walking down the hall one day saying, oh my gosh, about 85% of the medical illnesses here are lifestyle. So that's when I decided I'll go back and get my adult nurse practitioner degree, and I practiced primary care for a while, and eventually evolved to a point of feeling that clients have their own inner knowing and helping them access that as a way for them to discover how to reach their goals and be the healthiest person they wish to be felt more in alignment with how I wanted to approach healthcare. So I started my own small private practice in 2008 for holistic stress management, and then when it was available, became certified as a health and wellness nurse coach, and really hold that space now for clients to explore their own way, their own path, and that's the name of my business, Inner Light Recovery. It's your own inner light that's shining the way for you to find where you wish to go. So that's how I got to where I am in my practice as a nurse over these 30-plus years.
Well, it's very, very intuitive. Not everybody finds their path so clearly, and it's a great addition to not only nursing but advanced practice nursing that you're able to offer these types of services to clients and patients in your own approach, which is a holistic approach, and that's great. Speaking of holistic approaches, so we're both in holistic nursing, and I remember speaking to someone about you. They wanted me to talk with you about the Compassion Caravan, and we started talking about it months ago, long before any of our crises were happening across the planet, and it's been an interesting development of a idea for you. I'm wondering if you could explain to us what it is and how you decided to do it.
Yeah, so the Compassion Caravan is kind of a project that was on my, I'll say, conscious awareness for several years. And when I trained as a nature and forest therapy guide, part of my training, so it's a 6 months intensive training, part of that was with a week immersion in a sacred Algonquin forest north of Ottawa. It was amazing. And I did a medicine walk there, and it even brought the connection and vision clearer. And I know, that's kind of seems like a very quantum field way of clarifying, but it was then this confluence of energies from 2020, 200th birthday of Florence Nightingale, and the World Health Organization, Year of the Nurse and Midwife. How interesting it is that we have a pandemic at the same time we have the World Health Organization saying, yeah, this is the Year of the Nurse. So I find that really interesting. And then also the 40th anniversary of the American Holistic Nurses Association. And it was at the conference last year in Tulsa, where, by the way, I got to listen to you present, and what was an awesome presentation and really struck a chord with me, which is how I got to know you and follow your podcast. And I was starting to talk about this vision with people, and I got a lot of responses like, yeah, that's a really great idea. Oh, no, that's so needed. So it's compassion, and I know you read a definition of it, and there's even the Oxford Handbook of Compassion Science now that gets even more technical, so we can do research around compassion. But compassion is being expressed in response to nurse burnout. So before we even got to this pandemic, we have really high burnout rates in all levels of nursing, and the suffering was pretty palpable when you would listen to nurses trying to, especially in the acute care setting, figure out how to live their values and their vision of nursing in a healthcare system that didn't put the patient first. So I'm saying that kind of as what experiences I've been heard of people struggling with that. So compassion to that suffering. And so I started reaching out to lots of experienced holistic nurses, nurse therapists, leaders in the field, and they're like, yeah, sure, we'll help. So it becomes this organically birthed collection of healers, and, if you want to use that word, I like that word. It feels comfortable for me. Holistic nurses, scientists, artists, innovators, coming together and saying, yes, let's do this. Let's offer compassion in response to suffering and bring just a heart-centered healing presence for nurses to express what's going on for them. And then when we had, this was all planned in person, and we were driving from the Omega Institute in New York, where our first workshop was, all the way down to the conference in Santa Fe, New Mexico. So it was quite a fun plan, which we have rescheduled given COVID-19. But our workshops would also include a very retreat-like venue for people to explore and access their own self-care resources. So now, like the rest of planet Earth, we've been detoured, and we have to look at things differently and manage things differently. So we're moving to a virtual platform until we can be back in person.
Wow. So you have a lot in mind even before all of this started, which I happen to be aware of a lot of holistic approaches to care for healthcare staff because of my role in nursing. But not everybody out there in the world is aware of it, and I think this crisis is really bringing more and more of that to light, don't you think?
Absolutely. And I know even when I would speak with the general public about putting things together for the Compassion Caravan, the general public didn't have awareness of the conditions in which nurses work and how they feel and what they're juggling between work life and home life, and how the extent to the burnout rate that is experienced with bedside nursing and certified nursing assistants. And when you start talking statistics and extent, people are like, what? In the general public. So not only within nursing, which seems, interesting that we need to educate nurses themselves and all different levels of nursing as to where we really are in the level of burnout that's happening, but also the general public. Well, now the general public, though, with the Gallup poll, always respects us and sees us, but now they really see us. Now they really see what nurses in the acute care setting are, needing to deal with on a mind, body, spirit level and day-to-day work. And it's exaggerated. Now, listening to nurses across the country, I've heard all types of different stories of increased stress from things like, well, I was, working in this environment, but now that unit's closed and I've been moved over to this environment in a field that I'm not familiar with, or a type of nursing that I'm not familiar with, or I went from, my day-to-day preoperative job to screening for
for COVID-19. Or now we have, of course, what we are all aware of are COVID units or entire hospitals dedicated to COVID-19 virus patients. And so not only is it the stress that was already there, or the stress of having maybe an influx of patients and a saturation of one type of patient, but now we're taking folks from their familiarity and their expertise, which we've pushed for probably the last 20 years, for nurses to become certified in their specialty, experts in their field, technically adept for that type of patient, and moved it all around.
Yeah, and I hear two things that really stand out from what I've heard from nurses is every day there's a different rule, or every day, the procedures have changed. So not even knowing what they're walking into. So not only being in a different environment and, with different tasks to perform than they might be, but they don't even know each day what they're going into. So that's, that anticipatory, well, what now, it seems to be big for a lot of people in the acute care setting. The heightened level of fear, and that's where I hope, holding a space virtually, and I know a lot of people are doing this, where it can just be a kind of a vibration of love and a compassionate listening to really hear them on all levels. And then the other thing I hear, which is a hard thing to hear, is kind of a sense of feeling maybe disposable or not valued, that they're being asked to do things that, compromise their health and the health of their families. And I think that is more related to the shortage of personal protective equipment.
Yeah, and so we're hoping that starts to rectify itself. But, of course, in the last few weeks of, especially in New York, starting their surge, and other places in the country where they already had it, there's more and more and more media or people talking in social media about their situations, and it's becoming more and more clear and very fearful. I think that there's not only fear around what's happening with me today when I go to work, but also fear around, well, what's going to happen to me if I say something. I think that it's just a culture of healthcare that we take care of our patients and we support our institution. And I think it got so saturated so fast that folks were not knowing where to go, where to turn for support. And so there's all this vast amounts of information coming out of healthcare workers with not necessarily a place for it to land that makes sense to everybody that's reading it. So as a nurse, I can read things and understand what they're talking about, but I imagine there are folks out there that are not in healthcare who are either completely horrified because they don't understand the supply chain, or they're mocking it, saying, well, this is why you became a nurse, what are you complaining about, which is an unfortunate thing to hear. And so I'm really interested in how you're now developing these virtual support platforms for nurses for the Compassion Caravan, which are clearly going to outlive the one trip that you had started to plan from New York to Albuquerque. So how are these forming up, and what's to come with them?
Yeah, well, I just want to comment on kind of what you were saying about the suffer in silence, I think, was one of the things that you might have thought that this is your career, suffer in silence. And that, I feel, what an opportunity for ancestral healing we have here, because that's a very old message that doesn't serve us now. So suffer in silence. And then that kind of war zone kind of feeling, that may be expressed in some of those posts, I think that too is, let's reach to the spirit of Florence Nightingale, who, lifted herself up in wartime, in the nurses, and didn't allow that the panic or fear to override decision making in that. So I thought that those ancestral things I could see and hear in what you were just sharing. And part of that is, suffer in silence doesn't fit for the Compassion Caravan. We even when I began and I did the initial needs assessment for the Compassion Caravan, I was talking to people about it. Some people in nursing leadership said, you shouldn't be using the word suffer with nursing. You shouldn't say nurses suffer. And I found that really interesting. So now we see it glaringly all over. I don't watch TV, but it's everywhere right now, and it's evident, and not just nursing, but the whole population. And then there's a lot of interesting things that are developing that maybe we can bring forward. And one of that is saying, yeah, suffering is a human experience. It's part of our common humanity. I'm trained in mindful self-compassion, in the three core elements of that are self-kindness, common humanity, and mindfulness. So it's with this energy of common humanity and self-kindness we invite people into these virtual circles for which they can be held and compassionately heard. It's not therapy. It's not crisis management. It's not nurse coaching. And it's not a brainstorming session. It is just a place where you can come, be safe. It's non-judgmental. There is no crosstalk. That means you don't talk regarding someone else's share. It's all in the I statement. And I use the word witnessing. Some people, it's in a non-religious or denominational way. It's being fully present to hear someone and what they're experiencing. And I think that's hard too. So I've heard some nurses say they don't have a space to do that, and I've actually heard other professionals say that too. Like I know someone in journalism who, they're getting bombarded with all these images and stories, and then they can't really go home either and share it. So there's that, create a space for them to share it that they might not have. So of course, like everything that's happened.
I'm sorry, I was just going to say, it makes me think about when I was a new nurse and I was early in my marriage, and I would, we'd go out with friends, and they'd say, well, how's your job going? And it was the biggest mistake ever to start explaining what happened at work today. My husband used to say to me, well, you can clear a room in 5 minutes. Just start talking about nursing. And I didn't realize at the time how folks could not hear my stories. They just couldn't. Mm-hmm. It was not their realm to hear. And so I can relate with that, how, folks just don't have a place to share what they're seeing, what they're experiencing, especially right now. But all the time for some folks.
Yeah. And in an environment too that if you do choose to share, sometimes people try to either fix or intellectualize, or it moves to a conversation around economics or politics, and that's really when you need to share in a be heart-centered place. That's not really what people feel they need. They just need to be heard.
Right.
Right. So we'll have virtual room, and so we've come up with two formats that we think. From a very rough verbal needs assessment, we're thinking of perhaps sending out a Survey Monkey too, but it's needed now, so we're trying to mobilize our group, which was already assembled before this happened, which is so super amazing that all these wonderful people are connected prior to even COVID, that we are going to try to, we'll pilot out two formats. One is a quick 15-minute circle check-in I know you had mentioned at one time when we were talking about hope huddles, and it's kind of like that. It's a quick huddle. It's just a place to say a phrase, a word. We're trying to do this on Zoom platform, so perhaps just even a gesture or a sound like just somewhere to put what you need to put out quickly, whether that's at 4 a.m. We're trying to find the times that fit most for people, or on that car ride home between, from where your place of work is to your home. So that's one format, just a quick check-in. The other format is a 45-minute compassionate listening circle. And that's a place where people can tell their story. And so a more lengthy share. And again, the compassionate listening circles are not therapy or crisis management or coaching. They're just a place for heart-centered listening. And in both these offerings, we'll have what we call facilitators, just people to experienced holistic nurses, 3 of them, to make sure that the safety of the environment is being held. And also, kind of like we were talking a little bit about, is coming in and able to hold the vibration, to have balance there, because there might be a lot of fear and anger and all that kind of vibration coming in, to hold the place where that could be expressed and perhaps let go of if people wish to, but also allow for that vibration of loving, non-judgmental acceptance to be in that space. Does that make sense?
Yes. I think it makes great sense. And, I think it's great to have 2 options because of the lack of either time or just maybe not knowing what this is going to be like to share in this type of environment. It's great to have the brief or quick check-in that people can first participate in if they're not ready for the other one, the 45-minute compassion circle. I think it gives options. And believe me,
and I also
go ahead.
I also want to make sure that I mention that silence is a very beautiful, valued share. So if someone comes and just brings their presence and wishes to share in silence, they can easily say, I wish my share to be silenced today. And that's, a lovely addition. So I want to just put out there, people don't have to have a share. They don't have to know what they're going to say when they come. They don't have to have something to say. They just, it just is, wow, I feel like I need to sit in a space with compassionate, loving presence right now. And then, that's an appropriate thing to come and just be there in that space.
That's right. Well, since we're right at a compassionate silence, I will say that I have to take a short break. But before we do, I wanted to see if you could share with our listeners how they might learn more about the Compassion Caravan or get in contact with you. If you could give us some contact information before we take a break.
Sure. So simply go to compassioncaravan.com. You can reach out to me via the contact page. We'll keep updating the content on the webpage as, again, things change on a rapid way. We have a Facebook page, The Compassion Caravan, and Instagram's The Compassion Caravan. And we just are developing the YouTube channel so we can post videos and also invite other holistic care providers who have videos if they want to post them there too, just so it's a resource space for nurses. Lots of beautiful things happening, lots of people responding to the need, so that's fabulous. So follow CompassionCaravan.com. If you go there, you'll be able to find what you need, and if you don't, you can find me, and I'll help you find what you need.
Okay, thank you, Maggie, and we'll be right back.
Whether it's coming from the world of entertainment, integrative medicine, quantum theory, conspiracy facts, ancient archaeology, sacred geometry, financial trends, or perhaps even from the very world of self-help and motivational speaking, Real Revolution Radio possesses the information you need. Listen today to our daily inspiring lineup of podcast radio talk shows, only on realrevolutionradio.com.
Today to the Marine Show, where we will introduce you to the world of alternative remedies. Join Maureen Pisani as she hosts discussions with leading experts in the fields of hypnotherapy, acupuncture, yoga, Ayurveda, EFT, chronic healing, integrative medicine, and so much more. Maureen will also brave topics that many consider taboo. Yes, taboo talk. Tune in today to The Marine Show, heard on popular social media and now on Smart TV. It's a mindfulness radio production only on RealRevolutionRadio.com.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Cleveland, we now have liftoff to a higher level of consciousness. Tune in to RealRevolutionRadio.com, the #1 source for independent music and inspirational podcast radio. Awaken, evolve, inspire, and join the evolution only on RealRevolutionRadio.com.
You're listening to RealRevolutionRadio.com. There's hope as long as you're alive.
Welcome back to the Transparent Holistic Revolution podcast. I'm Barbie Picciano. I'm your host. And today we're talking with Maggie Brown. Welcome back, Maggie.
Thanks, Barb. I'm glad to be here with you on this day.
I am so happy you're here, too. I wanted to just do a side note. We had discussed, Maggie and I had discussed hope huddles before getting on the air, and I wanted to clarify for our listeners that hope huddles were created by Emily Fawcett, who's a frontline COVID-19 care nurse in New York City and at Lenox Hill Acute Care Hospital. And so we just wanted to clarify that that wasn't something that we had come up with, but something that's out there that a acute care nurse started to put into place that got a lot of publicity on the news and the internet over the last few days. And hopefully Emily just, starts a big wave of really what she started as is support for her colleagues in her own department and other departments. And we think that, as holistic nurses, we have kind of a view because we've been in these sharing circles at our conferences and we've had our own experiences with helping others or having help given to us. And so to see it get publicized like that for me was a huge, huge, excitable moment because we don't usually hear, A, the positive stories on the news, but also, B, things that nurses did for themselves, that self-care coming out in the global news platform was super exciting. And so I just wanted to clarify that so that folks didn't think that was something that we came up with because it's so exciting that someone came up with it and it got such national coverage. And it goes along with what not everybody might know, that if they don't work in healthcare, is there are these tiered huddles in healthcare now where there's communication from the bedside all the way to the highest executive suite about things that happen day to day so that they can get addressed. And so following that model, I think, would be a wonderful addition to the tiered huddles in any healthcare setting to add a piece that has the Hope Huddle component to it. Don't you think, Maggie?
Yeah, absolutely. So, thanks for clarifying that and sharing more about it. And what I see when that was created is nursing innovation, right? And not only that, but courage and vulnerability, So the young lady, I think you said her name was Emily, she stepped forward and created that for her fellow workers. So it is beautiful, simple, doable, needed.
Yes. And before we went to the break, we ended talking about silence and holding space. And I was hoping maybe you could explain to our listeners that might not be as familiar as we are with what do you consider holding space for someone in a holistic manner, from your point of view?
Yeah, so I'll start a little more concrete, and then I'll move to a little bit more quantum field-ish for those who love physics, because I'm a total science nerd. So as a nature and forest therapy guide, I have the pleasure of guiding people from all walks of life. I guide in arboretums, and they come to experience a way to connect more deeply with nature. So Florence is smiling at this too, right? Because nature cures. And it's in that experience, so you do a prompt, an invitation to the participants, very lean language, very clear language as to how to connect with nature. So an invitation might be sit and be with water, and we may just sit by a creek for 15 minutes. And then it's followed by a circle share. And we have a talking piece. That's something someone holds, so you know the person holding that piece is the person sharing. And people just talk about what they experienced doing that. And the piece is passed, and silence there is also a welcome share. And it's that sense of being fully present and witnessing and holding space for each other that I often have participants in the forest therapy walk talk about. That's a takeaway for them. It's like, wow, people haven't heard me like this before. And that's kind of a very concrete way of holding space and witnessing that people do for each other. And it's not, our current society has so much distraction and, attention to other things, that to be fully present for each other is something that feels rare to a lot of people. So just being and listening, and also I invite people to consider listen to someone else's share without worrying about what you'll need to say when it comes to your time. I remember that from grammar school, being really nervous and anxious, like, oh, when it's going to come to me, what am I going to say? And in high school. But, and I invite people, just don't worry about it. You're not getting great, just let go and see what happens, what will come up for you to share when it comes to your turn. So that's a way of holding space and witnessing that people from all walks of life can practice and do. It does involve not having a phone with you or not having any type of distraction. So that's one thing. And then I think you specifically said like witnessing and holding space for our terms, that if you are a holistic nurse or you're very comfortable and in your realm of thinking, but it does, and that's kind of why I clarified. I don't mean witnessing in a denominational or way. It's just being fully present so that I make sure that all the stuff in my life is not on my mind. I'm here in the moment. I'm completely present in the moment. There's nothing in the past that I need to concern myself, and there's nothing in the future. I'm here for you. My feet are, I'm grounded, and I'm being with you, mind, body, spirit, and listening to what you're saying in a very deep, open, non-judgmental, not evaluating way. It's what you're sharing is your story, and I'm witnessing it. So I'm seeing it and being, fully there for each other. And I think that's it's a practice people are really hungry for. I saw that, and that I'm sure is part of what fueled the Compassion Caravan coming together. It's our common humanity. We're suffering because we're not, that sense of connection's not there. And that's why we see overall suicide rates going up, and our suicide rates are higher than the average person. It's the sense of connection is not there, and people are hungry for it.
I think that's a great description. I talk with folks about being in the now a lot, because being in the now is just that, and it's very hard to conceptualize for some folks, especially now when they're thinking about the unknowns and what is to be. I hear it on maybe the news pretty commonly is what's the new norm going to be, or what will we have what we had before. And I really encourage folks to not even think about that, to really just think about now. And one of the coaching principles that I have is really meeting people where they are, and I think that fits well into what you're explaining too, is we're not planning on having commentary and problem solving. This is really about just being present. where you are is where you are. I think that's really wonderful. And so with the Compassion Caravan, are the listening circles, are they getting up and running soon, or what can we expect as far as when things are going to be in place for folks? Because I know you're still kind of getting it together.
Well, we have a pilot team so we're calling it pilot team. So we want to try to have it out by next week. Our pilot team meetings tonight. We are having the first circles and the check-in circles and the compassionate listening circles to make sure we have nurses that are seasoned, that are holistic, that understand that space of the concept of holding space, witnessing, not problem solving, not fixing, just being, and anchoring that energy, that loving vibration of energy. So the plan is to get it out as soon as we can. So we have the pilot team meetings tonight. We're having an all-teams meeting in the Compassion Caravan tomorrow night. And if you're free, I'd love for you to come, Barb, where we're actually going to pilot it with us, the team members, and which are a lot of very wonderful, seasoned, deep, thoughtful individuals. And then, because we want to do this responsibly too. We want to make sure what we're offering is beneficial. Do no harm is always the, guide, and that we're going to do something that is going to support nurses. So the initial thought for the check-ins was possibly 4 a.m., 8 a.m., 2 p.m., 8 p.m. They'll be listed on the websites when they're offered, and a link to Zoom platform. We'll see how that all works out. That's the one we're going to go with because it's historically been very reliable and consistent platform to use. I've used for coaching. And then the compassionate listening circles will probably have 2 a week. And those would probably in the evening. So we're thinking like 7 p.m., maybe 8 p.m. East Coast time. That'll allow people across the country to come to. And, our friends in Canada as well, or internationally, anyone who would like to come, though all the facilitators so far are fluent in English only. So it's trying to get them out as soon as we can, most responsibly, so the target is next week.
So today's April 1st, just to remind our listeners, so we're looking at the second week or maybe the third week in April for everything to be up and running. And I think it'll be very well received and very timely. I'm sure that there is no one thing that folks are looking for, but I do think that being heard is probably one of the most important factors that we have in these types of stressful situations, not to mention any time in healthcare or in a stressful type of job. And I think that there are folks out there that maybe aren't nurses who are looking for the same type of venue. So if you have folks who show up who aren't necessarily a nurse, how are you handling that?
That's a great question, because that's if you put the Zoom link on the website, then people can come. Mm-hmm. I think that, we either are a nurse, we know a nurse, we've either needed a nurse or we will need a nurse. And this is a topic of common humanity. So we also want it to be safe. So I would say that we haven't said, it's written on the website and everywhere for nurses and healthcare workers. So that includes everyone who's in the system helping. I after speaking with someone I knew who works in journalism, I thought, oh gosh, we need to do a circle for journalists. So I think, starting with nurses and healthcare workers keeps that umbrella safe there for them, because it is different, but I don't think that the intent is to be exclusive, and there may be someone who's a spouse of a healthcare worker, that shows up, and that's another beautiful thing about having 3 seasoned facilitators and having the ability, even if someone comes to the call that really ended up on the call that really needs crisis management, that one of the facilitators can break out with that person and help them get the resources that they need. Not break out with that person and do therapy, but break out with that person and get the resources for them. And that's, part of our planning is putting together resource lists for each facilitator to have.
Yes. Yes. And I'm sure those will probably end up on your website at some point in time as well.
And there's a lot.
Yeah, well, I was just going to say I'm seeing a lot pop up all over, not only things that were already established, but newly established things. And the one distinction, I think, with the Compassion Caravan is that although some folks may not know who you're talking about when you're talking about seasoned holistic nurses, they're listed on your website. And, in fact, we had Margaret Erickson here on the show. Some people know her, but other folks that are on the team, that's a big distinction, because there are folks out there trying to help, and they're doing wonderful jobs at just offering support. But this is a very unique and targeted, like laser-focused share place. This is where folks are trained to know, what folks might need in this kind of emoting mode. And so from my background, doing Code Lavenders at a large hospital, which was holistic rapid response, so it was a different type but similar, meaning, we were going to people, they weren't coming to us. And maybe we were going to them in the moment or shortly after an event that happened that was emotional. Same type of idea. It wasn't therapy, it wasn't coaching, it was really being present for them and offering some self-care tools, which is a little different. But we also were really diligent about having folks trained so that they could pick up on what some of the signals might be that folks needed more resources or they needed more support immediately, whether it be immediately or not. And so I'm really glad that you're putting that into the thought process. It's very responsible. And that's what I would implore to the listeners, is when they're looking for a support, that they're being diligent about who's supplying that support to them. Does that make sense, Maggie?
It does, and like you said, it's all good intentioned, but there are some nuances to a crisis situation and the stress involved that people who have experience might have a little bit more. And so, like you said, resources like the ANA is trying to put a resource page together, the American Holistic Nurses is. There's always, the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention, suicide hotlines, crisis hotlines. Those are all things that need to be up there. It would be nice to have crisis hotlines manned by nurses. And I did send an email to someone who's on the HNA suicide committee. Are you guys going to have a nurse or healthcare provider manned crisis hotline? So I think that to see that would be great. I know after 9/11, nurse coaches went up to offer coaching post, like the immediate crisis, but to get support. And I think that's something we need to look at as responsible nurse leaders and innovators. What is going to come after this? What kind of supports are going to be needed? And how do we, move forward in a vibration, I guess, so I'll go quantum field here, of non-attachment, non-grasping, loving kindness, but to potentiate the shift where, we healthcare providers are well-equipped the next time something like this comes around.
I agree, and I think that this will, just like we started the conversation talking about, this will really initiate a lot of innovation and a lot of, we're going to be inundated with information, and what we do with it is up to us and how we utilize it for the future. I think that I'm glad you brought up 9/11, because as a healer type, I do some different types of modalities. I work with folks on trauma and releasing trauma and grief and releasing grief. And for some people that might sound a little out there, but it really is a thing that you can work on. And there are some techniques that help. But when we're looking when we're looking back on this, I think about 9/11 and looking back on 9/11 and how there were some great things that came out of 9/11 that are still in place, or techniques in the holistic world, like the Seva stress release from Soul Lightning Acupressure that was developed specifically for folks that were first responders at 9/11, and continues to be an outreach program for them, and something that could be utilized in cases like this. So I think that we're going to learn a lot, and we're going to have an information-rich path moving forward. And I can't say enough about folks like you who are really taking, like you said, being brave and taking the first step and saying, this is something you started before this crisis situation, but how appropriate it is to really become something maybe much more developed than you had imagined in the short period of time that you were planning it for, from May until June to the conference, just as your breakout, and to get your idea out there and get it going and get the mission moving forward. Now you're going to have this established, exercised program by the time we get to our conference in the beginning of June, the American Holistic Nurse Association's annual conference. How do you feel about that moving forward?
It's like universal guidance. I feel like this is a really time where we get a lot of support from the other side. And there's a great quote by Florence, and I can't find, is it in Notes on Nursing? I can't find it. I'm going to have to pick, the brains of Nightingale scholars like Barbie Picciano, but it's from Florence, and it says, how very little can be done in the spirit of fear. And that's attributed to Florence Nightingale. And, I feel like that's it. We're in the Compassion Caravan is rooted and birthed in the vibration of love. And it's exactly just kind of following guidance of universe that had us all together up and running when this came. Who could have imagined? So I allow it to unfold and expand. And one of the things we say is, it's on the back of our little T-shirts. It says, widening the circle of compassion. And that is our opportunity here. Compassion this is a Dalai Lama quote. Compassion is not a luxury. It's a necessity, and it's part of our common humanity to hold self-compassion first, which is most often the hardest kind, and then compassion for others. And living in that vibration, that place, we can maybe perhaps, and I'm going to sound very geeky here, bring balance to the force where we've had a lot of yang energy, a lot of energy that's for people who are not in the energy field. The patterns of society right now have been a lot about industrialism and money and profit and things and materialism. But this is more of the energy of human connection, human kindness, self-kindness, these beautiful beings that we are on the planet, not distracted by those other things.
I do believe that, and I think that it's okay to geek out a little bit when we're talking about energy and the human connection, because it's times like these when folks really they stop thinking about all the belief systems that they have around it, and they say yes, yes, because their resistance is different. We let a lot of our existential fields drop because we're kind of, even if we're fine, I know there are folks that are fine. They have what they need at home. They might be sheltering in place, but they're working from home, and, in some ways that's easier, in some ways that's harder, and they're just, a lot of those extra things just aren't thoughts right now. You don't have to drive to work. You don't have to go buy gas. You don't have to do all these extra things. And so the flow, their thoughts are easily accessed versus having all these extra things, depending on how we choose. How we choose to go about our day and what we let in. And so it seems like I go back to when I was a kid with Hands Across America. I'm aging myself, but Hands Across America brought people together, and they connected in the human experience of what they were talking about with each other, and the drive and the mission was all the same, just like 9/11. We had the same drive and mission and connection, and in different ways, but we were all on the same page. And I think we're there again, and I think that we can talk pretty openly about compassion and human connection, and moving forward, it's going to just take people like you and the Compassion Caravan to keep that momentum going. And I know I'm excited about the Holistic Nurse Association and moving forward with probably the largest group of at least members, if not attendees at the conference, how we're moving all the energy forward. I can imagine how that could really become a centerpiece for next year and moving forward with the Compassion Caravan. So I'm really curious. I know you're in the middle of changing it up and making it virtual and moving forward with it, but what's your future vision of the Compassion Caravan?
Yeah, I love it when team members ask that question too. I'm like, okay, people, let's stay in the moment. No projecting. But concretely, we have rescheduled for October. The details are getting in play, and of course that makes some people anxious too, because there's a lot of projection. What are things going to really look like? But the goal is to do in-person workshops, which we have submitted them to the American Holistic Nurses Association to get continuing ed credits. And the workshops will be in retreat-like settings, and the whole purpose is to keep the price down so people can come. And I know we had planned to have free spots for students and free spots for certified nursing assistants because they don't need the CEs. And the lectureships and the presenters are all offering their valuable expertise without charge, which is one of the really amazing things of this project coming together. People are using their own vacation time, their own work time, their time off of work, and their own expertise where they would be normally compensated for, are volunteering it because they're answering the call, see the need, the intense need of support for nurses, and then what's coming if the change wasn't made, but now we have this opportunity for change, so it's even more. I hate to say this about a very difficult time, but it is an opportunity to potentiate more change in the direction of better working conditions. So yeah, it's and then beyond our, I laugh because I'm like, okay, our schedule is moved back now, and we're still within the umbrella of 2020. But what happens? Is there a 2021 run? That's the rhyme. Mm-hmm. Is there a 21 run? I'm like, I don't know. Let's just stay here. Do what we gotta do. So we'll see. Universe is very creative. Yeah. It is, and I see a definite expansion in the future for you, and a bigger team forming and a real movement. And I know you mentioned that folks are volunteering their time, and so before we finished up, I wanted to mention to our listeners that when they go to your sites for the Compassion Caravan, there is an opportunity to donate, and also you're doing a T-shirt sale. So maybe you could talk quickly about
how folks can help out the Compassion Caravan and in all the different ways that they could do that, and also ending up with how they can get in touch with you again.
Sure. Yeah, thanks for mentioning that. We do have a donate button that takes you to GoFundMe. Anything is welcomed, and we promise to be good stewards of the money. It goes to keeping the cost down for nurses to attend. And when we're on the road, it does go to gas and tolls, which we added up and could be a lot of money. But it also goes to, making sure, feeding the nurses at the events, those kind of things. So what comes in goes out. It's not for profit. We are offering we have an artist who worked with the project, Gaia Orion from Canada. So check out the website because her banner is beautiful and the logo's gorgeous. So we have T-shirts with the logo on it, and the back says Widening the Circle of Compassion. So they're really super comfortable. So I will put the links put the link up on the website. We've had 2 sale runs, and they're back up on sale. And so that's a way. And then just come out when we are in person. Spread the word. If you know a nurse who needs to be compassionately heard, spread the word about the listening circles and the check-ins. It's with great gratitude that people are hearing and thinking about what you say of how to support. And when we are in person, we have a book that you can come sign, which is just a book that carries the Declaration of Compassion, and it's an opportunity for people of all walks of life to come and say, the Declaration is very simple. It's 2 sentences. It says, I acknowledge suffering as a human experience and embrace compassion as a beautiful necessity of humanity. Today, I will practice one small act. And then, if you wish, you can donate, and if you donate, we can give you a little charm that you can put on your cat or dog's collar or on your keychain or on a necklace. So those are little ways to help support the project. And again, money in, money out to pay for venue, rentals, all those things that go with supporting the nurses with these workshops.
Well, that's awesome. And folks can get in touch by going to thecompassioncaravan.com. Is that right?
No,
that right?
Compassion Caravan, just compassioncaravan.com. Yeah, but the social media pages do have the word the. So the Compassion Caravan. But if you go to the Compassion Caravan website, it'll have links to social media as well. And never hesitate to call. If you're hearing this program and you got a question or something, put in the contact page. It will come to me, and I'll get back to you. And whether you want to share a thought or have a question or need more information, I answered my phone the other day, and so I was like, because my phone number's up there. They're like, there's a person on the other line. I'm like, yeah, we're here. What can we help you with? So
imagine that. Well, that's great, yeah. Maggie. I appreciate you, and I appreciate the Compassion Caravan project addressing suffering in nursing. I think that we should say it for what it is, and I'm so glad that you're moving forward with your project, and I wish you the best of luck, and thank you for being on the Transparent Holistic Revolution.
Thank you very much for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you. All right. Well, until next time, listeners, we're signing off, and feel free to share our podcast with healthcare workers and nurses that you might know. Spread the message of the Compassion Caravan and the Transparent Holistic Revolution. We're here to support you. Thank you.
The revolution will not be televised. The revolution will not be televised, but heard instead, dear listeners, through podcast radio on realrevolutionradio.com. Never before has inspirational podcast radio been taken to this next level of wow. Until now. Today, in the age of information, more and more people are searching for answers and in solutions and how to better approach and perceive every day-to-day concerns by tuning in to realrevolutionradio.com. Isn't it about time we take back our lives, back in consciousness, in a higher state of awareness, in the evolution of our own state of higher well-being? Yes, we can do so consciously every day by tuning in to the many groundbreaking and third eye-opening podcasts. Our new Cleveland-based network of over 33 paradigm-shifting internet talk shows. Only on RealRevolutionRadio.com. Be part of that change. Evolve. Be inspired.
5 Hour Energy is energy on the go. Well, what if you're not going anywhere for a while? Then 5 Hour Energy is for getting stuff done while you're stuck at home, like doing an honest day's work for your boss. Getting rid of old clothes.
Oh, my old bell bottoms.
Scouring the grout in your shower. Working out on that old stationary bike. And so much more. Go to the store or order online at shop5hourenergy.com. 5 Hour Energy. Energy for hunkering down. 5 Hour Energy is energy on the go. Well, what if you're not going anywhere for a while? Then 5 Hour Energy is for getting stuff done while you're stuck at home, like doing an honest day's work for your boss. Getting rid of old clothes.
Oh, my old bell bottoms.
Scouring the grout in your shower. Working out on that old stationary bike. And so much more. Go to the store or order online at shop5hourenergy.com. 5 Hour Energy. Energy for hunkering down.